Welcome to the Glengarry Bench. This is a segment where Glengarrians get a front row seat to what's happening on Parliament Hill. Hosted by Glengarry TV, this series followed MP Eric Duncan as he shares updates, insights, and behind the scenes perspective on issues shaping our county and our country. So, why the Glengarry Bench? Well, just because, like in Parliament, a bench is where voices are heard, debates unfold, and decisions take shape. Here, it's Glengarry's voice that matters. Our roots, our people, and our place in Canada's capital, which Eric holds for us. So each episode connects us to local content to the national conversation, offering clear answers or answers as well.
No pressure.
No pressure. No pressure. Okay. Thoughtful content. No pressure.
Yep.
Okay. And a reminder that Glengarry's presence in Ottawa is strong and steadfast. As you can see, I'm reading this, and that's elephant in the room, right? So, Eric, thank you so much for welcome. Thank you.
Thanks for having me in here. This is a cool setup.
Cool. Thank you. Well, thank you for joining us. Now, as I've discussed with you, this is just for to let the folks, the Glengarry folks, know. Basically, you've been elected, and what you're doing for what people always ask. Well, what does our MP do for us? And there's always that's always been that sort of that proverbial eternal question. And this is a chance for you to say, I'm out there, sort of, fighting your battles, and maybe sort of saying what some of those battles are. So you've been very a strong advocate about, affordable housing, especially in the Cornwall area, which we need. It's really vital, especially with the immigration, let's say, crisis we're in right now. So how do you see this connecting to Glengarry's own housing challenges? We do have some.
Well, all politics is local, is what I say all the time. And Glengarry is no exception to the rest of the country, perhaps sometimes by scale of our population and our growth rate. But we face the same challenges that many other parts of the country are going through, that we have a supply and demand problem. Overall, nationally, the government's own housing agency says we need to build 3.5 million more homes by 2030 just to meet demand for affordability, not to make the situation any worse. And that would mean we'd have to double the current rate of building. And we're actually seeing right now that we have a situation where buyers want to buy and they can't seem to find a place. And we have builders that want to build, but people can't afford to do all that because the cost of labor, the cost of materials, we can probably get into later, the cost of government when it comes to building new homes. So in terms of affordable housing, there's two parts, I say. There's a government role in rent geared to income, affordable housing that the local SD&G Cornwall Housing Services manage, but that can't solve our entire process. We have thousands of people in SD&G and in Glengarry County that are looking for housing options, and they don't really need the government to come in. They need the government sometimes to get out of the way to allow more homes to get built. And that's the number one thing. The private sector getting people to build rental units and housing units, that's going to be the number one way. So the question is, the government can't solve and spend itself out of this. How do we get the private sector? How do we get investment into housing? If we get more supply and we don't have 10 people chasing the same apartment or 7 people bidding on the same house, that starts to address your supply and demand and stops these drastic increases we've seen in housing.
Wow. See, no, that's very, that's quite important to sort of look at all of these aspects to actually sort of even out what's actually going on.
And so what the government's role is and what the private sector's role, and sometimes government needs to find out ways to stimulate that private sector investment. That's going to be the key. They can build by the thousands to get us out of this rut that we're in, this housing deficit we're in right now. There's private sector is going to have to step up to address that.
Is the private sector ready for this? Or
I think because the demand is there, it should be. You think the number of people that number of new homes that we need to build.
Do we have enough contractors and all of this?
Labor is always a challenge that you have that way.
Yeah.
But look at what I see now in our local schools. They're putting a much bigger emphasis on trades and doing all of that now. So carpentry, electrical, HVAC, plumbing, all of those trades and skills, they're putting a lot more emphasis on having young people go through to those programs. So I believe, yes, there's always those labor challenges, but we have to find a way, I say, to get to yes on this and get the private sector stimulated again. So one of the big things we've been talking about, and this is actually an interesting fact, when you build a new house in Canada, the number one cost, not a plurality, not a majority of the cost, but the number one cost overall is not the labor to build a house, it's not the materials, it's government and taxes. And you think of the
Yes.
HST that someone pays on a
Yeah.
new home, and when they go through, there's all these different building permit fees and land development
Yeah.
fees that go in. Government's actually the number one cost in Canada for building a new home.
Yeah.
So if we can lower that, where we're in a government, the government's looking, how do we address the crisis? If we can lower the cost, take the HST off of new home builds on houses up to $1.3 million in value,
Yeah.
that would instantly, you're looking at $40,000 to $50,000 coming off a new home just like that. That's an
Yeah.
instant way
Yeah.
we can create housing affordability.
Wow. No, that's a great idea. It's a super idea. Then this is something that your government is pushing forward as well.
Absolutely. Our Conservative Party, we were just out, actually, Pierre Poilievre was out talking about this today in the Greater Toronto area, is exactly that, is taking the HST off of new home builds on homes up to $1.3 million. One of the other things we have to do too is, and I've been a mayor before, I served as warden of the counties and mayor in North Dundas, the Winchester-Chesterville way. We have to get red tape out of the way and get more municipalities building more homes. And there's a lot of red tape and how long it takes to get a subdivision approved and so forth. We need to really improve that process. So what we could be doing is tying infrastructure funding and all the grants that the federal governments give to local municipalities, tie that to home building, saying, look, we need in Glengarry County to build X number of homes to address this affordability issue. Every home you build will give you X number of dollars. And if you meet your targets, you get bonused. Do all these types of things to incentivize municipalities to get to yes, to get subdivision approvals, to get building permits done faster in that customer service side. That's another thing we can do at a federal level that can help local municipalities as well.
Really interesting. Great. So you've helped facilitate discussions on supporting local businesses. Um, what is seemingly the most pressing concern raised by sort of the businesses in Glengarry or the counties around here?
The cost of living is the same thing for businesses as it is for home, homeowners and regular families here in SDNG. When I go out and I'm door knocking or I'm at community events and I'm asking people, what are you thinking? What are you feeling? A lot of people just naturally share that with me even having to ask. But the number one issue is the cost of living and the cost of doing business and inflation. And businesses are the same way, particularly small businesses. They're having trouble keeping up with wage demands, trying to find labor. But the big thing is the cost of goods on whatever sector that they're in. If it's food and retail, the cost of materials and goods has gone up significantly. Cost of labor has gone up. Taxes have gone up. And the expectation, what they need to do for their business, has really been under crunch. So that's a big thing that I hear all the time. I hear a lot about government red tape. Dealing with the CRA right now is not easy. Getting a response if you're having an HST or a corporate tax filing issue. Our office tries to help with a lot of that as well. But from a business perspective, that way, I'd say affordability, huge. Red tape and always getting frustrations of dealing with different levels of government's a big thing. And then having access to labor that way as well. The job market is very volatile, and overall, there's businesses that are impacted by the tariffs and the trade war going on with the United States.
Are they finding a hard time dealing with tariffs and
It depends
the
on
new
the business,
reality?
and it's baked into that cost of affordability
Yeah,
again, of costs going up. That's just one other factor that
and it's a
goes
roller
into it, is
coaster
right.
too.
A roller coaster, and it's cyclical that way. Everything is just going up that way, and putting the cost pressures of trying to keep prices competitive to deal with to get local business and to get international business as well. The pressures have been there, so certainly. I lump in that affordability, cost of living goes with the trade war that we're in. Some businesses impacted more than others. And I think just the general nervousness of people overall of what the future is going to be in that Canada-US trade relationship, and just overall this whole kind of global situation we're in with tariffs and the geopolitics of today. A lot of people are rightfully anxious about that.
Yeah. Do you think that networking events or like business events sort of help some of these, you know, sort of get out the sort of the anxiety of actually what's actually sort of going out there to not necessarily come up with solutions, but to actually put forth some some ideas? Or
I chuckle because people give ideas, but they also it's also group therapy as well, right? Because whenever you're having a lot of the networking events that I attend that chambers of commerce put on, there's breakfast connections
yes,
at local community events. I do a lot of business tours. I just stop and knock on doors of businesses, ask to go by if they're celebrating an anniversary or having an expansion in their business. I try to drop by, and I sometimes get mocked for that. I remember in the last election campaign here, people say, "Oh, the guy goes to everything." Well, it's out being accessible to people so people can feel connected and feel like if they have something to share with me, they can do that. And I can also keep a pulse on what people are thinking in the community. And it's been very, very helpful over the 6 years that I've done this, where I can keep a pulse of what people are thinking or in some cases not thinking. But going to the business end and the networking that's there, yeah, it's a bit of group therapy of where everyone's struggling, with having a small business and managing that, the HR, the cost of doing everything, but they can come together, get some best practices and tips, and see other businesses that are struggling but getting through, other businesses that have struggled and have gotten through it, and share those ideas and ways to do it. And I think share a lot of inspiration that way too, which is good.
yeah, no, I remember the debate of the comment was spaghetti dinners. I remember that, and
Yep.
but you know what, we senior socials. I commented before we started that you are ever present in the Glengarians and SDNG's their lives, and you're everywhere, and it's very refreshing to see a politician, to understand what the concept of House of Common means, being a commoner and sort of being mixing with the commoners, and that's quite refreshing and actually enjoyable to see on your
Well, I
social.
enjoy it too. I get out and I love meeting people, and people are very friendly here. I look at the situation. We always have some unfortunate situations we have to deal with security and the kind of crazy world we live in right now. But I'm very blessed in SDNG. When I was just at a couple of stores earlier today, I always joke I can't go in and get groceries. It doesn't take me 10 minutes. It takes me 25 minutes because people are always tapping me on the shoulder and having a chat. Always very friendly. People have constructive feedback, all those types of things. But again, I go back, it just helps keep a pulse. And I tell people I get my meals and miles in around SDNG, but I wouldn't have it any other way.
So, are there some specific things that the businesses are communicating to you that you are actually bringing back to Ottawa?
Oh, absolutely. That's what the summer has been about, doing a lot of that. There's a lot of stuff with Canada Revenue Agency.
Mhm.
That's been a huge thing where businesses haven't been able to get through. The union for CRA and the workers at CRA, Canada Revenue Agency, have it came out a couple of weeks ago. It was in the national news about the average wait on call for CRA right now is 3.5 hours. And at the end of the day, only 4% of people that call in actually get to talk to a human being. It's very broken right now. So I've got a lot of examples of where businesses are trying to get through and they can't get through. We're trying to go through our channels and help them out. But they're also coming up with a lot of ways to say, well, why am I doing this filing all the time this way? Or why do I have to complete this form? They're coming with a lot of good, different ideas about the underused housing tax and a lot of things that CRA is doing. Is there really a benefit for this right now? They're coming up with some very constructive ideas as business owners of ways that CRA can actually save some time, save some money, and redirect on frontline services. All those programs don't always impact only businesses. It can be for individuals as well. But I got a lot of ideas I can go back with about how CRA can improve its dreadful performance these days. That's just one example of the feedback you hear.
Okay. So, what do you think are top stories for Glengarry that you're advocating at the federal level besides the business? If you think we talked a little bit about the housing, we talked a bit about some business CRAs or other issues that are being advocated.
Housing would be number one when I
Yeah.
talk to people having the real estate market and people's access to housing. If people aren't looking for a home or looking for a place to rent, they know somebody or several people that are. Their children, their friends, their neighbors, their coworkers. Everybody has a degree of separation, at least only one degree of separation at most, from somebody that's been impacted by this. So that's undoubtedly the top issue. Immigration is continuing to pick up, particularly with the labor market right now. I'm noticing a lot. We've come out with our policy on scrapping the temporary foreign workers program that's exploded in size under the Liberals. And we're seeing now a lot of businesses, I think, frankly, and a lot of corporations start to abuse that, where we're starting to see an increasing unemployment rate. Well, if that's happening where we're at 7.1%, the amount of temporary foreign workers we need should be going down, not up. And so those concerns around immigration and programs are where we want to have immigration, but we want to have the right number that we've had this consensus in Canada for generations between conservative and liberal governments alike that if somebody immigrates to Canada, we kind of make this pledge to them informally that they could find a good job, they can find an affordable place to live, and they can have that social safety net of healthcare and those social programs that can help people out over the course of time. And we've seen all of that come under a massive amount of strain. So housing, cost of living, immigration have been a lot of the main things that I've heard feedback from people locally, and they all have different effects both locally and nationally.
Because that's what's on pretty much on the docket for the what's coming up in the fall session. Or
We're back next week, and a lot of that another major issue just again is public safety and crime. We're seeing a lot of, sadly, increase in crime take place.
Even in small towns and
Rural crime and all, and just more brazen and bold of where all these the cases and the brazenness of it. And I also think a broken system as well of where people are getting extremely frustrated to see people being charged with serious crimes, sex crimes, or repeat offenders, repeat violent offenders, going in and out this revolving door, and more of these cases are becoming known, and so people are getting increasingly frustrated where they're arresting the same person 5-6 times and they get back out on bail again. So these pathetic examples are out there too. So crime has been another major issue where it's impacting rural communities as much as it is urban ones, and more people are talking about it as well.
Yeah, we see a lot of living in a rural area. We talk about connectivity and internet and all these things that we see as we're going by. The people trying to put in fiber as much as they can,
Yep.
and everybody's saying, when is it in? When is it coming up? And sometimes as in a town, we don't feel so left out. But when you're living in the countryside, you're saying, well, remote work is also, it's a thing now, right? So people they're saying that sometimes the connectivity is not coming as fast. Is there something that is sort of being pressured at the government level to be able to say that all Canadians should?
There's always been dollars for connectivity, and they're getting more there for fiber. The big issue comes down to red tape, and I'm dealing a lot of this right now where there's these fiber lines being installed through a mix of federal and provincial funding. ExplorerNet, Bell, different companies. You go down the county roads or back roads and you see these companies going in and they're either burying it or they're putting up posts or they're attaching to hydro lines. And one of the big things right now is the red tape delays of where money has been approved and it's sitting there and it's stalled because
Really?
Hydro One hasn't approved the use of putting fiber on their poles, or they have to add a certain number of poles and need to use a certain number of hydro poles, or they need to get locates done, or to be able to use an easement, and they're having major issues that way. So sometimes I always say the dollars are committed for projects, but the bureaucracy and the red tape of getting people stopping to work in silos of where you've got all these different groups trying to have the same goal of getting fiber in, but it's taking much longer than what it needs to. Cell towers, we had the same problem that there was the dollars and the buy-in from different levels of government, all 3 levels of government in our area in Eastern Ontario and in SD&G to put all these cell towers up. But then it took years upon years to go through the red tape and the applications and the studies and all the different permits that were needed. The time between buy-in politically and having dollars allocated, that's one thing. But the actual time to get the shovel in the ground and get the project completed, it leaves something to be desired. And that's a big issue with connectivity right now. There's dollars there, but there's just not that coordination to make it as smooth as possible.
Yeah, same with infrastructure too for other things. Eric, thank you for coming in. Is there something? I hope this is not a first and the last time. I hope we can sit
I'll be
down.
back.
You'll be back. Thank you. I mean, this is great because the Glengarrians do enjoy with whether it's with yourself, with our mayors, and hopefully the MPs will come in too. We're fishing out there for some of these folks to come in, tell their stories. We can have these conversations. Is there something you'd like to add or say to to your constituents, especially the folks living in Glengarry County
Well, I'm getting more out and about in North Glengarry, the new area. I've had
Yeah.
the honor of
Oh, that's
representing
right.
South Glengarry,
This is new to you, sir.
new territory. So more people to meet and more places to go and businesses to visit, doors to knock on. But the response has been great. The people in North Glengarry have been
We are
very
friendly
warm,
folk,
very
right?
friendly, just like the rest of Glengarry and the rest of SD&G. I consider myself, honestly, I consider myself blessed to represent the area that I do. The people here are great. Our service clubs, our volunteer groups are second to none. And so getting out in the area and getting more known, we have a passport clinic at the Bonnie Glen
That's
happening
right.
tonight, which we're likely to have a couple hundred people at. And then we have a regular satellite office we have every Wednesday morning from 9 to noon at the North Glengarry Township office. So if people need to drop off their completed passport application, if it's Canada Pension Plan, old age security, anything to do with CRA, child tax benefit, disability tax benefit, immigration, we're there to help on Wednesday mornings in Alexandria to have a presence here close to home.
So, people, you know that your MP is available Wednesday morning in Alexandria, but also throughout the county. It has his offices so that you can reach out to him to see if you have things to say, issues, or perhaps inquiries about what's actually going on and
We do a lot of casework.
how he can help.
You bet.
So, all right, well, Eric, a pleasure.
Thank
Hope
you.
to have you back soon.
Thank you for having
And
me in.
as I've said, this has been the Glengarry Bench, and hopefully we can have this conversation again. Thank you for listening, and cheers. We're out.